It's been great having fun along, and we've come to understand and kind of learn a lot of the same stuff. And but back to my story, I was at the point where I knew I had to start living differently, but was still a little bit intimidated by it and uncertain about it. And I had kind of reached all this stuff at the end of my deployment, and after I got back, we had a month to be back home with our families, and just kind of that experience brought everything home for me even more when I was with my own family and in my own community, just like all the things that I had been contributing to for the last 15 months, like I was able to imagine it being done back home, and that like if somebody was able to come and rip through my house whenever they wanted and tear apart stuff and enforce a curfew and with little or no suspicion be able to detain me or my dad, and if they took away my dad and treated him the same way that we had treated some of our prisoners, then I wouldn't really feel like he was in very good hands. And just all these kind of simple things kept coming up in my life, from taking out the trash to this idea of doing unto others, and I wouldn't want somebody doing what I had done to this other country, and I knew that I had to do something about it, and I started kind of developing a plan, and I looked at the address on my paychecks, and I was going to write, or I was going to walk to where it was in Indianapolis and kind of throw all the money that I'd gotten for doing what I knew I wouldn't want other people to do to me, and say that it was wrong of me to accept this, and that I can't keep doing what I'm doing, and if I need to spend the rest of my enlistment in prison, then that's where I need to be. And I told my parents that a couple days before I was planning on doing it, and they weren't too thrilled with the idea of me going to prison. And started doing a bunch of research on other options that I had, and they told me about this thing called Conscientious Objection, which I really hadn't heard of before. And I had to really debate with myself about if I could go through with that. Kind of on the one hand, I was intimidated to be kind of the only person and go back with all these guys that I had deployed with, and be the only one to kind of not go along with the program, and how would they treat me, and what would their reaction be. And in a lot of ways, like if I were to have gone to jail, I wouldn't have had to deal with that. And two is that to be a conscientious objector, you have to object to all war, and I was just so focused on the Iraq war, and so I had to really kind of search myself and think through it, and just went back and thought through all the things that I really had learned in Iraq, that the only thing that really made sense to me was this internal condition that I had been developing, and that I could, say that there's all these possible worst case scenarios, and now I have to keep training myself to kill and to judge and to hate other people just in case something really bad happens. But I had been living my whole life just to protect my physical comfort, and doing that I ended up depressed, and the only time I found meaning was through connecting with these values that exist outside myself, and this internal condition, but it's not dependent on me to be there. I'm just lucky to have experienced it and to have learned about it. And as I thought through it, that was really the decision. It was about this internal condition, and as I thought about it, and as I've been questioning about it since then on this trip, I've been asked by a lot of different reporters and other people, have I killed anybody, or have I seen any atrocities, or have any of my friends been killed? And if I take what my religion says at face value, then when Jesus said that it doesn't matter if you've even killed anybody, if you've looked at somebody hatefully, then you might as well have. And that's how I lived my whole life, was talking about who had a right to live and die, and who was good and who was evil. And even before I got in the military, had psychologically and spiritually killed other people by the way I viewed them and the way I was judging them. And the choice for me was I going to continue doing that and continue harboring all this hatred and judgment in my heart, or was I going to go the other way and start to not judge and to accept everybody and to try and love everybody and to do positive things and live my life that way. And that's the only thing that really made sense to me. And so I went back to base and started going ahead with the process. And the first part of it went fairly smoothly until it came time to start going back out to the ranges and training to kill. And I told my leaders that I had decided to live my life in a different way and wasn't going to harbor that hatred and that training to kill people, and that didn't make a whole lot of sense to them, and got a few people angry, and my first sergeant kind of flipped out on me, and he's this guy kind of in charge of like 120 people, and he called me out and started calling me a terrorist and a traitor and a whole bunch of stuff like that, and it had worked out that the day before that happened, I had been reading this book by the Dalai Lama that talked about how love can be expressed through a simple thing like breathing, and again, just all these simple things kept being so profound in my life, and I was sort of skeptical when I read it, but as the situation happened, I figured, hey, why not give it a try? So as he's there kind of flipping out on me and calling me all these names and stuff, I was able to sit there and take a deep breath, and just like I had seen, in Iraq when we were just trying to match intensity and anger with our enemies or whatever, then it just continued to make things worse, and the same thing was probably going to happen if I had given into that temptation to respond with anger to this guy. And so I let him say what he had to say, and I didn't try to get angry at him or to judge him, and tried to really understand where he was coming from, and realized that not long ago, if somebody had said what I was saying to him to me, then I would probably have some harsh words for them too. And also as a leader, I figured that he probably thought I might just be trying to get out of work. So I waited till he calmed down, and we were able to work out work that I could do, and I told him, this was something I was sincere about, not just trying to get out of work, and just really try and hold on to this inward condition, that whether it was through fighting a war, whether it was dealing with somebody who didn't like me, that I wasn't going to respond with anger and judgment anymore. And that opportunity came up again a couple weeks later when I got a phone call from a local peace group who said that they had heard about what was going on, and that this was a great opportunity. They could get me a lot of publicity, and I could go to the news and say that my leaders were harassing me and were denying my rights, and that it was an opportunity to really make my leaders look bad. And I had to say that, I appreciate you wanting to help, but for the most part, people have been respectful, and the few people who aren't, that's something I need to work out on an individual level, and by going to the news and criticizing them, that's just going to drive us apart even further. And that really ended up working out, and 10 months after I applied for my Conscientious Objector process, and it got approved, and this guy who had before been yelling at me and calling me these names was able to give me a hug and wish me good luck on my life, and that was just kind of a really powerful example of how this really does work, and this isn't just some sound good phrase or whatever.